Hi, guys, and welcome to the Just Hoops podcast. In this podcast, we are going to introduce our Coach's Corner, which will be podcasts that we bring to you, the Just Hoops fam, and it will be breaking down schemes, concepts, philosophies within the game of basketball that we find interesting, and hopefully it's insightful conversation that brings value to you guys and helps you guys out, helps you guys understand stuff, while also us bouncing ideas off of each other. Hopefully the conversations we have could benefit you, and this is the first edition of it. In this episode, me and Ben go back and forth over UConn's defense. I'm hoping you guys learn something about what it takes to have an elite defense like the UConn's women's basketball team has had in recent past under Coach Gino Ariema. They're one of the best teams year in and year out, and one of the most historic programs in college basketball history. So me and Ben had fun breaking down their defense a little bit for you guys. And I hope you guys enjoy, learn something. Thanks for listening, and here it is. Hey guys, and welcome to Just Hoops. I'm here with Ben.
Hey guys.
And we're gonna have our first edition of Coach's Corner. So me and Ben did this kind of on our own last year, and we would go to a hotel lobby and just chop stuff up. But today we're doing it over Zoom, sending it out to you guys, and we're going to break down UConn's defense. And we got a big women's basketball junkie right here, so he's excited. I'm excited. UConn's a fun one. So first off, I'm going to just lay the stats out there, and we'll go from there. So as a team defense, they're ranked number 3 via synergy. They held their opponents to 52.6 points per game. They held opponents to 34% from the field. They forced 17.8 turnovers per game. They forced a turnover percentage of 20.4% and a free throw percentage of 7.1%. So they didn't foul. They forced a lot of turnovers. You didn't shoot well against them. You only scored 52. When I saw that stat, I was like, oh my God. I know that they win by 40 most of the year, but you hold teams that on average 52.
Right.
So there's nights you're holding teams to 40.
While you're scoring 80, yeah.
For real. But that's insane. So one of the points that I want to talk about is just how they play on the ball. So it's very straight up. The only time that it seemed like they forced the direction this past year was when it was on closeouts and they would take away the strong hand. So if it's a righty shooter, you close out with your left hand up, vice versa if you're a lefty. And that was the only time direction was in it. I found it really interesting because of how direction is such a heavy part in basketball today, especially on defense. Everybody's are you a pack line guy? Are you a no middle guy? And then you see one of the best defenses in the country not force a direction.
Right.
To me, that I just find that really interesting. They're very contained based.
Yeah. Kind of goes against the grain of what everybody else has traditionally done.
Yeah. It's something them being able to do that and be as successful as they are is it's cool to see, because it's defense is defense. If you can't guard your yard, you're not going to get on the floor. That's kind of what Gino does, because their style, 1v1, straight up defense, contain yours. There's really not much help in the gap. The only help is if they get by and get to the rim, and they do a really good job at making sure that there's a big at the rim.
Oh yeah.
But it's very I don't know if it's old school is the right term to say, but it's very creative. Being so simple at the same, the simplicity is creative.
Yeah.
That was the major thing that stood out to me with them.
I think it's super, you were saying, simplicity stuff. I feel there's not a big point. If you can do one thing very well and be very successful at it, don't make it super difficult.
Yeah.
Like I feel like just because it's so simple is one reason that it can work very well. And with the
Um,
right, I mean, with the right people, that helps too. But
yeah, that's actually that's a good point. Like with people, because you can even I guarantee like Gino, like watching this, and then I've watched UConn women like in the past.
yeah,
The style changes based on who they have.
oh yeah,
So this past year, they had a ton of like size and length across the board. So you saw switching, you saw
mm-hmm.
more like we're gonna pack the paint and good luck. Like we have so much size and length. Like try to beat us. And that like how he thinks it like the comparison to me to like the men's side would be Duke. Because
Mm-hmm.
Duke year in and year out, like they have so much turnover and Coach K has done a phenomenal job at putting those players in position to be successful. Like you saw 2 years ago, they pulled out a 3-2. The Zion year, they
Yeah,
pulled out 2-3. Like they did different things based on who they had to just put people in spots to be successful. And they're two of the winningest coaches and programs in basketball. Like it's for a reason.
right. Like, I feel like you gotta. I feel like this goes back to adapting the game or how you think of the game, how you play the game around your players, and not making the players adapt to what you want to do. You know, like that's an important concept in the coaching realm.
Yeah. Is there anything that stood out to you about how they played?
Yeah, one thing that I wrote down is they do the little things well. I was just watching some games from the tournament yesterday, watching some clips, and they just, like we said earlier about switching, and they didn't have to help that much. But that's because they do the other things well. And when they did have to switch, and they did have to um, make those adjustments, they communicated that very well. Like you just, whether it was with their mouths or with their body language or whatever, most of the time people needed to be where they needed to be. And if they weren't, someone else could help make that adjustment. And I thought that was very important that they um, just did those little things well, because that ultimately leads to better success in the game itself.
Yeah. For me, the little thing that stood out was their hands. Their
Yeah,
activity with their hands, like that goes back to the turnovers too. Like their activity on that on defense, their hands are always out. Like you can find any given like possession.
every player.
That's everyone, five of them. Like you don't see that in today's basketball. Like they're very disciplined, they're regimented, they know what they got to do, and they go out there and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Gino's phenomenal at teaching. Like the
Right.
communication that you brought up, oh my god, like Gino is one of the best to ever do it. So it's like hard to like say, oh yeah, he's really good at this, but like his teams are phenomenal because he knows to emphasize those little things.
He's brought the like a good culture to the program too. Like he's just built that up over the years. And like every time you see a video or an interview or something, like they're always excited most of the time. Like when Gino, when I think he had COVID at some point last season, and he came back to them. Like they were all super jacked about him coming back and like welcoming him, and it was just super cool just to see that culture.
Yeah, that's it's cool to see that stuff and see how a coach's relationship with the players.
Right.
So could I talk about zone?
Yeah, that's your thing.
So in the notes I shared, I put a heart emoji next to zone. I love zone defense, guys. So they showed us a 2-3. It was interesting to me because it was a matchup, but at the same time it was very tight. Like they weren't stretching it and giving a ton of gaps. Like they were really cramming it in. Basically, the lane line was their blueprint. That was where they would always fall back to the lane line. Like the blocks were actually like where they were positioned on the wings. The elbows and nail were where the top guy that wasn't on the ball was positioned, and the middle was filled. Um, their matchup sometimes broke down, but it's kind of just like within a zone, it's bound to happen at some point within the flow, balls moving. In a matchup 2-3, like you're gonna have a possession or two where you break down and a matchup gets confused, two people on the ball. Um, Going back to their hand activity though, this is where when I saw their zone clips and I was really looking at their zone, I was like, dang, like this is I don't even think Syracuse has this active of hands. Like everyone has their hands up and out. Nobody's holding suitcases. Everybody's active, like tipping passes, making passing lanes harder. And they're not even up in the passing lane. They're all dropped in. And just because their hands are so active, they're forcing the offense out far. That's a win. Like,
Definitely. Um, I also thought with, I mean, this kind of goes off with their hands is uh, most of the time they stay down on the when with the perimeter jump shots and defending those. They didn't have to leave their feet because their hands were so active in what they were doing. It's like if you don't have to leave your feet, then that's just another way you can better play defense on the perimeter with those jump shots. Like you said, they only held them to, or they held most teams average 52 points a game. And that's one reason is because they mostly played man defense. They can have those active hands all the time, especially when guarding perimeter shots. And that's just it's a, not fun for the other team. I mean, I wouldn't want to play against it.
I think the big thing with their jump shots, like guarding against jumpers, it was their defense is very contained based. It seemed like their everything was under. You're dropped. You're sitting back in your stance, ready to contain a drive. And just because of their positioning on the ball, I guarantee players on the catch, like unless if you're a shooter and you're ready to rise up and knock it down, and you're in rhythm, like you're sitting there like, am I like supposed to shoot this? They're like, are they close enough? Do I have enough space? Like that just because of not being up and pressuring the ball, like they're still there. Like their presence is felt, but it's in an area where you can screw up the decision making process for an
Right.
offensive player could be so much harder because it's just they're not up in your grill, but at the same time, they're still there. So it's like, oh, do I have enough space? Could I get by? Could I do this? And then on closeouts, they do a phenomenal job at taking away jumpers.
Right.
Really good job.
Right.
They hands up, close out, take away the strong side. It it's really good.
I see on the notes you put something about the ball screen. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
Um, how it like the ball screens hurt them in their loss in the Final Four last season. Um,
Um to me, they gave up a lot with their ball screen defense in that game against Arizona in the Final Four. They there was a lot of two people stuck on the ball. When you look at other games, it ended up a lot of they would get in their coverage and then recover, or they would just switch. Against
right.
Arizona, it was a lot of gray area and a lot of like miscommunication, and it just didn't seem right of a UConn team.
Right.
And that to me hurt them a ton because Arizona also shot the hell out of the ball. Like that's a give that besides that, um they just seemed like kind of unsure what they were trying to do. Sometimes there was like drops, over and drops, sometimes they'd hard hedge and under. Sometimes you would see the hard hedge in and over and like they had variety throughout the year, but they didn't seem like everyone was on the same page in that last game.
Yeah. I do wonder with that. I know we were talking about a little bit before this. Is like how they deal with adversity on the team. I've noticed because in the tournament you had Nico Mule get hurt. You had Gino had to sit out some due to COVID related issues. I do wonder if that adversity, like how much of that plays a part into what they do on the court. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah,
that can be a hard thing to overcome at any level.
100%. 100%. That's just that's a lot of stuff you can't control thrown your way, you
Right,
know.
right, right. There's only so much you can do. Uh,
That is tough though to have all that happen in a Final Four setting.
Yeah.
That
Um,
could have 100% played a major part in a couple of those miscommunications and stuff.
right. Um, One thing with the zone, what do you think about? Like, why do you think that they? I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, when I was looking yesterday on the synergy stats, they played man most of the time. Um, but yet they still played that zone very, very well when they did it. How do you think that relates to each other? Like, how do you think they're still able to mainly play man, but then just come in and play zone when needed?
I think that they threw the zone. All right. So first they threw the zone out there as like a wrench, like you're throwing that at the offense and they're like, "Oh dang, like I'm not ready for this. Like I thought you guys were going to play man." And then I think that they were so good at it because it was a matchup zone and at the end of the day they were able to just translate their man 1v1 principles to
Yeah,
the zone and then just the other four players, you just got to pack in.
right.
It wasn't, I don't think it was that hard to teach, but the players have to buy in. That at the end of the day, with a zone or with any style of defense, players have to buy in. So I think that they had the personnel to be very successful at the zone. I was honestly, after watching, I was surprised that the like percentage that they used zone was so much lower than it was.
Right.
They were
Yeah.
really good in the zone.
Yeah.
Um, I know that like Gino's typically a man-to-man guy, but they definitely could have exposed teams with a zone a lot more throughout the year just because of how good they were in it
Mhm.
and the personnel.
Right.
Was there anything else you saw?
Um, those are the main 2 points in the little bit that I got to watch yesterday. But like one thing, the players, the girls, women, they needed to they when they needed to be somewhere, they were there. Like they didn't um, slowly get there. They were flying around the court. Uh,
Yeah.
like kind of goes back to your basic shell drill, just flying to where you need to be, um, being in the gaps where you need to be, and denying and that kind of thing. But they just needed to be where they were there where they needed to be. They weren't hesitant to get there. If they messed up, they did it with confidence. I think that's an important part. Um, if you mess
Preach.
up and you're not going to be and you're going to go slow in it, then that's like two things you just did wrong and two things that is going to be detrimental to your team. Whereas if you do something, do it with confidence, whether it's wrong. I mean, at least you're confident in it. You thought you were doing the right thing, whatever.
Yeah.
But hopefully your teammates can help you come back and um, what's the word I'm looking for? Come back and help fix that mistake. But that was one thing I noticed yesterday. They were just flying around on their man defense, hands up, ready to just go at it, forcing a lot of turnovers and one-on-one situations. That was a big thing too, the one-on-ones.
Yeah. With like how you're saying that they were always like just flying around and making plays.
Yeah,
Their switching off the ball I thought was huge. They did a really good job at Xing out, at peel switching, at off the ball, just to like take away take away action, take away cuts, take away
yeah,
make rotations easier. Um One example, like a Euro action, they'll like so the ball will get reversed through the big in the middle, the 45 through and a fill up to the wing.
mm-hmm.
Unlike an action like that, the top player will just stay and deny with the fill,
Yeah,
and then the person on the bottom is going to just meet them at the block, meet the 45 cut at the block.
right,
And then it just turns into nobody had to move. The rotation was easy, and you're already in position to like guard the handoff or pick and roll that's about to happen on the side.
right.
So them being able to do those things and make it easier almost
Mm-hmm.
while also having that attention to detail and like movement with purpose.
Yeah, move it with a purpose.
That that's an awesome point you brought up.
Um,
Really good point.
One thing I saw, kind of same topic, different example, was I forget which game it was. It might have been when they were playing High Point. I could be wrong on that though. But the point guard would have the ball, and the play would be to throw like a lob pass to the post, where in the post was fronting the big man on offense, but that pass rarely ever got in there. It was always like too long or too short or whatever. And I just thought with like the hand pressure, making that pass with these active hands in your face is not a easy task whatsoever. And also like making that lob pass to the post, getting it on the right spot. Um, just active hands, playing with a purpose. Goes back to just like those little things of my hands always need to be up because that's just um, what coach told me, like what I've always learned, and it makes such a big difference. I mean, that's a turnover right there. Ball goes out of bounds, or you get the steal. You know.
Yeah. Their post defense was very solid. They did
Yeah.
a really good job, like on the ball, pressuring the pass, and then along with that, the three-quarter front on the
Yep.
post, they were always fighting for that.
Yeah.
That Paige would get stuck down there sometimes, and she would not give up. Like she would fight over top, get her hand over.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the backside, they did a really good job at bringing that big that wasn't on the strong side down at the hoop
Yeah.
and having size down there. That just deters somebody from passing too. You get it down there, and then they're doubled because you catch that. Imagine you catch that. You got somebody on your top side already, and then you got the big coming over to help. You're stuck like at the backboard, you know? It's a hard spot to make a pass out of, especially if it's a post player. Most post players ain't going to make a good play out of there. So their defense in the low post was very solid, very solid.
They definitely had worked hard on that. You can tell, and just had that motivation to do it.
Yeah. You got any more points?
Um, I think kind of sticking with the post a little bit, and this isn't so much of like action wise as much as just pure hustle or pure motivation, whatever it is. But there's a couple clips I saw where point guard has done their job, kind of gotten a loose ball, the ball's kind of going crazy, but you got the post trying to dive on it from wherever, you know. Sometimes it was at the top of the key, sometimes it was at the 3 point line, whatever, and they were just trying to like that's where they needed to be, and they made that happen. And I just think that's a important, like knowing your role. Yeah, I'm a post player. Yeah, I'm supposed to be here most of the time, but if my team needs me in another spot, I need to be there too. You know.
That ties in with what you're like moving with purpose that you were talking about earlier, being willing to just do things that you have to do, make winning plays.
Right. I feel like that separates a good team from a great team.
That's why UConn been so successful, man.
Exactly. Exactly. Shout out G-Man.
One of the best to ever do it.
He really is. Let's see what else we got. I just look at those stats again, and I'm just like, wow.
That dude, when I start, all right. So this came together very last minute. Okay, just for the people listening. So I just put together some notes. First thing I do is look for stats. And when I saw they held teams to 52.6, so like I knew that they win games by a lot.
Yeah.
But 52 points per game?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my, they don't play like the deaf and blind. No offense to anyone, but like they're in the Big East.
Yeah.
They have a national schedule non-conference. Like they play people, and your opponent points per game is 52.
Yeah.
Mind blowing.
Like that goes back to like not only is UConn scoring points, they're not letting other teams score. Like it's not like an offensive battle, one way, one sided.
Yeah.
It's both ways, you know.
They dominate, man.
Both ends of the ball.
Yet alone offensively, don't they average like 80 something?
Yeah, I'm about to look that up real quick. Actually,
They average it got to be over 80.
it's
I'd
kind of
say 84.
let me look right now. Offensive.
We could have whole other pod about their offense, man. Definitely top five. Got to be top five. Number 4 offense.
Really?
Yeah, I don't have points though.
one thing that's also interesting is how many players they have in the WNBA. And I think that goes back to the just like the culture and stuff of UConn as a whole.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. Gino makes sure his girls get they understand what it means to be great. Like
Yeah,
you go to UConn to be great, you know.
exactly.
You got to do the little things.
Exactly. The little things matter.
3 hours later.
I got it. 81.
Wow.
81.9. Number 4 offense.
That's crazy to me. Not only are we keeping teams at what, like 52, 56,
52.
but we're scoring 80. 30-point gap. Slight flex.
But hey, you got any closing remarks? Closing comments?
Yeah, I just one thing about UConn that it's like me. I love it because my dad loves it, and that's just because he's been watching it for ever as long as I can remember. The UConn women, and that's always like a big thing we have in our family. She's like, let's sit down, let's watch this game, let's always talk about it. Whenever they play, like me and him are always talking back and forth about it. So I just think I have that cool connection there of just um, me and my dad always talking about it, and it's just a fun thing for me, you know.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
We had all them coffees, man, and you
I
just
know. That's one reason that I've just always enjoyed watching the UConn women play.
that's awesome, man. That's
Also I wrote Gino a letter last year.
Did
I
he
haven't
get
heard back
back?
yet, but not
No.
yet. But it's also been like a year, so I'm not super
Did
concerned.
you listen to his episode with Slapping Glass?
I have it saved on my phone. I just haven't had a chance to listen to it.
They talk about defense on there. Anyone listening, highly recommend it. Listen, I'll put it in the description. It was a great podcast with him. He talks about defense a lot in it, actually.
Okay, cool. I'll have to go
Um,
listen to that one.
so it could relate to some of the points we brought up. But to end it for me, they're very contained based. They do the little things at a high level. At the end of the day, their players buy in, they bring energy, they understand what it takes to win and do all the things that we talked about in this video and more. It's hard to talk about most of this stuff without having visuals because they're very good at so many little things on a consistent basis, and to be successful, you have to stop the ball, you have to protect the paint and contest shots without fouling. And they do all three of those things at an incredibly high level. And it's made them one of the best programs in history of college hoops. Uh, so that's it for our first edition of Coach's Corner. Ben, what you think?
That was fun. Just like old times, Jacob. Got some coffee and we're in a hotel lobby again.
Exactly, man.
Can't wait for the next one.
Yes, sir. So hope you guys enjoyed. We're gonna keep having more podcasts. Stay tuned on socials and YouTube. Ben's gonna be trying to make a video here, so pressure's on, man. The people know. The people know.
This will be a fun one.
But thank you guys for listening and have a good one.
Have a good one, y'all.